Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Today I'm going to talk about the macroeconomics and the implication of macroeconomics on the investment decision. This is important for the business student, and in particular when they are taking investment decisions or giving recommendation for the investors. I think this is a very important chapter because it focus on the investment environment, and one of the investment environment as external environments, the macroeconomic environment. Generally speaking, when investors taking this decision, they take the decision in the light of fundamental information. One of these fundamental information is related to the macroeconomic information. I will show you some economic calendars or some economic information which is important for the investors. You may go to the Bloomberg or other website or Reuters to know about the economic calendars. If you look at this economic calendar in 2015, investors, before starting up the investment, they revise the macroeconomic indicators because they think it has direct implication on the fluctuation of the stock price or either for the bond price. If you look at just randomly, we have here jobless claim. This is an important indicator for the economic environment and measure of unemployment rates. As far as I remember, last week, Germany has improved their jobless claim for more than 19 years, which good indicator for European economic. And this is why we observe the stock exchange in the European region is improved in the recent weeks. If you look at the petroleum reserves here, is also important for the economic indicators. The Treasury budget, which is a part of the balance of payments. The Treasury bills announcement regarding the interest rate of the Treasury bills. The BPI, the Producer Price Index, which is one of the main indicators that's being focused by the investors. So this is a very important website to know about the major macroeconomic indicators that may influence on the investment decision. So let's go back to our learning objective of this chapter. So first of all, we should know about the major economic indicators. One of these main economic indicators, GDP and GNP, the gross domestic product and gross national product. And we will focus on the factors that may influence on the interest rate, also the factors influence on the discount rate, the Federal Reserve rates, and the other federal rates. We will also talk about the tools of monetary policy and fiscal policy, and different measures of money supply. We have M1, M2, M3. It depends on the measure that's applied by the central bank, and how the fiscal and monetary policies are applied in the macroeconomics. I have a video to explain the impact of macroeconomics on the investment decision. Just look at these videos.
In the previous chapters, we've built up for one person being recruited, through them being trained, through them having a manager, through them being motivated, and through them working in the accounts department. Now we're going to have to start thinking about what happens to an entire organisation. So for the first real time in chapter 10, we start looking at what's going on outside the organisation and how this affects what's going on inside the organisation. So we started with a very narrow focus, one person being recruited, built it up and up and up. With the last thing we looked at was the accounts department, and now we're going to talk about the outside world. So the macroeconomic environment is all to do with the things in the outside world that actually affect an organisation. Obviously, this is a very, very big deal in real life. Things in the outside world affect companies and the way they're structured all the time. If the economy is doing badly, we may need to have redundancies. If the economy is doing well, then we may have to be having extra divisions. So this is a very important thing in real life. Now, the good thing about Chapter 10 is, although it's about what goes on in the outside world, it's not really very detailed. It's not an economics paper, so it's very, very basic stuff. It's the sort of stuff that, to be honest, if you read a paper once a week that includes some business news, you probably come across most of these things anyway. So there's nothing to be frightened of. So the macroeconomic environment.
You know what he said? He said it's fine if you read economic paper at least one time a week, because you are, as a business student, it's important for you to know what is going in the outside world. If you don't have that experience on understanding what's going around you, it means it is out of the clouds when you are talking about the investments, because investment is not this intangible or disengaged from what's going outside. So his recommendation is important when they focus on not in the internal environment, but either to the external environment. Okay, so let's
talk about. First of all, then, what do we mean by economics? Production, distribution, and consumption of goods and services. That's just the standard definition in case you get asked it. It's all about producing things, getting them to customers, and it's about the consumers actually using them and then needing more which need to be produced, and so on. It goes around in a circle. Macroeconomics is talking about the economy as a whole. Microeconomics talks about individual companies. We're not really bothered about that. Macroeconomics is talking about the big picture. Now, this is the sort of thing that they will have in a newspaper, on a news programme, on the television, where they're talking about how well an individual country is doing. The kind of things that we're looking for: demand for goods. Demand for goods.
Demand for goods.
Is it going up or down? Output of goods. How much do we produce? Now, obviously, if we demand more than we produce, we are going to have to get those extra products from somewhere. That's what they tend to be talking about when they talk about us importing products. It's because we can't make enough at home. Some of you may have talked, or maybe you may have come across something called the trade balance. That's all to do, in effect, with how much we're importing and how much we're exporting. So, how much do we want? How much do we make? If there is a difference, that needs to be made up somehow. Factors of production. Land, labour in particular, capital, finance. So, do we have enough finance, or do we have to borrow the money from overseas banks in order to invest in the UK? Do we have the right kind of workers in the UK, or do we need to train them to do something different? Over the last few years, one of the reasons why China and India have become particularly strong is that they have a supply of cheap labour. So in industries where that is important, a lot of manufacturing has, for example, gone over to China because they've got one of the factors of production. National income and expenditure.
So you observe when he's lecturing, he tried to give more examples about the economic indicators. So from the lecturing point of view, students are not limited to the material. This is what is going in one of the prestigious economic schools or the business school. again, the student, they don't need to limit themselves in the textbook. This is why in the last meeting, just to encourage you and to show you how the other comparable students like you sitting in other business schools and having lectures. I tried this in the 2 years ago, and some of the students, they keep nagging why you are using some examples from outside, from Palestine sometimes. So this is important for you because this is a practical thing, and it has influence, implication on your investment decision. So see carefully how the economic is moving the investments.
National income, where do we get money from? National expenditure, what do we spend money on? Now, oversimplifying things, but a good way at least to think initially about income and expenditure. Income is what we raise from taxes and expenditure is what we spend it on. It is more than that because it's not just government. It could be I perhaps earn some money from abroad, that's part of the national income. I perhaps spend some money abroad, I go on holiday, I spend some money, that's part of the national expenditure. But a lot of that's going to be made up by the government. Finally, a big thing is going to be government policy. So, are they trying to expand? What exactly are they trying to do? Macroeconomic policy. Most countries are trying to achieve similar things. They want the economy to grow. The economy growing basically means that people become wealthier. So when we're talking about the economy that's growing, we mean people will have more money, they'll have better standards of living. That's what we tend to be talking about. Low inflation and low unemployment. So an ideal situation will be people are working and inflation's not going up. Those two may be incompatible with things. The trouble with those two is as more people have jobs, they want to buy more things with the money they earn. That tends to put inflation up. Inflation is all to do with more people want things than can provide it. If you've got 10 customers and only one supplier, there will be inflation because the supplier will obviously sell to whoever is going to offer them the most money. So if you have got low unemployment, lots of people working, it often means high inflation. Similarly, if you've got very few people working, if you've got high unemployment, there is no demand, you have low inflation. Often they go opposite each other. At least that's the theory. In real life, it's a lot more complicated than that. Finally, we've got their macroeconomic policy, the balance of payments. As I said earlier, the balance of payments is all to do with money going out of the country.
What he said regarding the conflict between the inflation and unemployment rates, it's going on the opposite direction. As the inflation is go up, it means the unemployment decreases, and when the inflation is going down, which is mean deflation, then the unemployment rate is increased. So this is the idea. We aim to increase the economic production and then to promote the economic and to decrease the number of unemployed people. In the first lecture, I showed you the jobless claim, which is one of the important indicators in the. And when you have the jobless claim, it means in the other direction you have the inflation rates. So the majority of these economic indicators are connected to each other. Let's carry on and to see the other.
Most countries don't want to owe too much money. So a balance of payments surplus, more money comes in than leaves, is better than a balance of payments deficit. More money is leaving than is coming in. Again, the trouble is if you are spending lots of money abroad and you're not importing a lot of stuff, it's actually quite difficult for the economy. It's got implications for how much the currency is worth and stuff like that. Fiscal and monetary policy.
So it's important to know about the balance of payments. The balance of payments measures the money is coming to the country and the money going out of the country. So the output of this relationship could be the deficit or could be the surplus. If the country is at the surplus, it means there is a growing up in the business or in the investments. If we have a deficit, it means the import is greater than the export, and in this case, the more foreign currency leak to the outside, and in this, it's not encouraging investment environment. So studying the balance of payments accounts or indicators is very important as well for the investment decision, and it could have early indicator for the investment situation.
Get all these things to work. The government basically has two weapons that it can use: monetary policy, and in a minute we'll talk about fiscal policy. Monetary policy.
As he said, we have from the government perspective, we have two main weapons. The first one is related to the monetary policy, and the second one is related to the fiscal policy. The monetary policy is managed by the central bank or managed by the Federal Reserve Bank. However, the central policy or the fiscal policy is the Ministry of Finance is interested in doing this. And generally speaking, there is a clashes or a conflict between the two policies, because the Ministry of Finance, they have their own understanding or they have their own policies regarding the economic situation, and the central bank, they have also they have their own weapons, they have their own tools. So within this meeting, we will know how the fiscal policy and the monetary policy influence on the macroeconomic environments, hence the investment environments.
It's all to do with things like interest rates. Now in the UK, when the Labour government came to power in 1997, they gave the Bank of England the freedom to move interest rates as they wanted to. So in the UK, that one is not an option. In the Eurozone, France, Germany, etc., etc., again, the European Central Bank is independent and will do what it wants to. In America, the Federal
you observe the monetary policy is interested by the central bank. For instance, if you talk about the United States, the Federal Reserve Bank is in charge on running the monetary policy. If you talk about the Japan, the Central Bank of Japan is interested in running this policy. If you talk about Jordan, the Central Bank of Jordan. If you talk about the Palestinian territories, the Palestinian Monetary Authority. If you talk about Saudi, the Saudi Monetary Authority as well. So in each country, we have a body which is represented as a central bank, are in charge on managing the monetary policy.
Reserve is probably more guided by what the American government wants. So in some countries, the government might be able to say, we will put interest rates up, we will put them down. Again, very, very, very broadly, and again, please appreciate this is a complicated subject and we're not worried about the complexities of it. Very, very broadly, you put interest rates down if you want to boost the economy. Interest rates
this is a very interesting observation. When we have the recession in 2008, most of the central banks, they reduce the interest rates because they want to boost the economy. And when we have economic developments or economic growth, in this case, we reduce the interest rates. So in recent report of the Federal Reserve Bank, they tried to increase the interest rate as an indicator for the economic development and economic growth. But if you back to the 2008, you will observe that the interest rates is keep diminishing as an indicator for deflation or the economic contraction.
Encourage investors to invest.
Yeah, so increasing and decreasing the interest rate, it could be a good indicator for the investors to know where is the economic is going.
People don't have to spend as much on their mortgages Therefore, they have more money in their pockets, which they will go out and spend on other things. Companies that have borrowed money don't have to spend as much paying the debt back, therefore they will spend the money on other things. The idea is that if interest rates go down, people buy more. So it's one of the ways that you can try and boost the economy.
So in the inflation time, the volume of money is large. So when we are increasing the interest rate, we try to absorb the volume of the money in the hands of the people, just to try to keep the economy as stable as we can. But if we are in the deflation or in the recession, we have less money available to the investors. So we try to reduce the interest rate. We try to push the spending, the government spending to the people, to give more money to them in order to buy and to invest.
If you want people to stop spending as much money, again perhaps because there is inflation, and you don't want people to be buying as much stuff, then you put interest rates up. That's the idea. Foreign exchange policy. Again, if we have a lot of buying and selling with overseas countries, if, for example, the pound is very strong, it means that imports are very cheap. So it means it's very cheap for a British person to buy something from abroad. You start buying things from abroad, you start importing. On the other hand, it makes it very expensive for somebody else to buy a British product. So imports go up, exports go down. Now the trouble with that is it means money is leaving the country, and the government may not want that balance of payments deficit. So again, those are two broad things that the government can do. Fiscal policy is all to do with spending, borrowing and taxes. Government spending. If we want to boost the economy, we will increase spending. We will spend money on hospitals. We will spend money on infrastructure, road building, etc., etc. One of the things that the American government did in the 1930s, following the Great American Depression, was they just started building things almost for the sake of it. If you build something, it means you need labour. If you build something, it means you need materials. You start giving people money for doing something. Once they've got that money, they then spend it on something else. And that gives other people jobs. It's in a way, it's a way of kick-starting the economy. So government spending could go up, again, if you want to get more people working. Now, the only trouble with government spending going up is it has to come from somewhere. And there's only two places. Governments borrow the money, or they tax people for the money. Now, what you might have then is you may have a situation where governments want to spend more money, but they don't want to put taxes up for whatever reason, in which case they'll have to borrow more. Now, borrowing money is fine for today.
So in the time of deflation, the governments generally try to borrow money from the local banks or from the outside, and they don't like to increase taxation. So they try to keep the taxation at the minimum level, because they want to encourage the buying and the purchasing power of the people. And the problem of this is borrowing is not free from the government perspective. So you have to pay back what you borrowed. So in the time of inflation, when the economy is starting to grow up, in this case, the government is starting to pay back what they borrowed in the time of recession.
To pay that money back. So there is always a big balancing act that has to go on that governments have got to try and do. How much should they spend? How much should they tax people? And how much?
Okay, yes.
طب احنا حكينا عن deflation, the government tried to borrow money, صح؟
In the time of recession.
In the time of recession.
Yes.
طب برضه حكينا قبل إنه it tries to decrease interest rate.
Yes.
طب ما هي لما حتعمل borrowing
when you are decreasing the interest rates, it means you're giving more facilities to the investors to invest. And when you are pushing more money to the people, I mean to the individuals. Then the individuals, they buy, and they are encouraging factors to produce more. So you want to promote the economy, because in the time of inflation, the price is up, and then they try the more unemployed people, and you are going to the recession. In this time, you need to encourage the economy by reducing the interest rates, which is a monetary policy, reducing the tax, which is fiscal policy, okay, and the sum of this policy encouraging economy. But the problem in this period, we don't have extra money in this time. I mean, the government. So the government, in this case, they try to borrow money from the local market or from the outside.
Yes.
But this is limited to the period of the recession. And be careful, this is fine for the industrialized countries. It's not good for the for other
Yes.
countries.
Should they borrow? Now, when economies in the world are doing badly, as they are in 2008, then governments are tempted to spend more. They don't want to put taxes up because that takes money back out of people's pockets and they can't spend it on things. So they'll have to increase borrowing, which is going to cause problems potentially at some later date. Now again, you don't have to understand all this in any great detail. It's not an economics exam, but hopefully you can see the link. If we want to spend more, we either tax more or we borrow more. Similarly, if we decide we want to put taxes down, then the most likely thing we're going to do is spend less. So it's always a balancing act that's going on. Now, what kind of things make a difference for how much people are spending? And again, the big credit crunch of 2007-2008 is a very good example of what happens to determine these things. One of the biggest things is confidence. If people think that things are going to get worse, if people think that they might lose their jobs, they stop spending because they need to have the money in the bank in case they are made redundant. The trouble is, if people stop spending...
And this is important indicator because it's related to the behavioral finance or behavioral investments. And this measure is declared every month about the price confidence. The price confidence is an indicator on the purchasing power. So when people think the future will be a light future, then they're spending more, and this is a good indicator for the economic growth. When people think that things will go worse and worse, then they try to limit their spending. So this is important indicator for the business.
Not spending any money, it means that other people will be made redundant. It almost becomes a vicious circle. So the idea is, I'm worried about losing my job, so I don't spend anything. Because I don't spend anything, a person in a shop loses their job. So if they lose their job, they can't spend anything, and the whole thing gets worse and worse and worse. Confidence is incredibly important when you're talking about economic stuff. Aggregate demand. What's the total demand in the entire country? Look at all the workers together. Look at businesses, workers, governments, and how much do all of them together actually want to buy? Do we want that to go up? Do we want it to come down? Supply finance, and this again is another big problem that there's been in the credit crunch. People needed to borrow money in order to expand. It could be me wanting to buy a bigger house. It could be me wanting to have a new car. Both of those in effect mean I'm going to expand. A bigger house, a bigger car, it's something new. For a company, it's investment. They need to invest for the future, to do things in the future. Now the trouble is, if they can't borrow the money, which is what's going on in the credit crunch, they can't expand, which means they're stuck with what they've got at the moment. They can't buy anything new, which means demand will go down. So again, those two are very big problems.
Yeah, the problem in 2008, the banks they try to limit or to decrease the borrowed amount of money, and in this case there is less opportunity to invest. However, the interest rate was down or is close to zero. But there is no money available to the investors, and the bank managers think they don't have confidence about the future. And this is, we can connect between two things: the confidence and the supply of finance. And the two indicators being severe in the 2008, there is no available money to the investors, and there is a high less confidence about the economic growth.
In 2007-2008. Factors of production, we've already talked about things like labour. One of the biggest things that affects the economy is, do your labourers, does your workforce have the right skills? 50, 60 years ago, a lot of manufacturing companies were around that needed skilled labour. Now, one of the biggest skills that people need is things like IT.
What he said, a lot of factories back to 30 years ago, they need a skilled labor, which is important. And one of the severe indicators in the 2007 and 2008, the government and either the private sector, they kick out a lot of the employees or labor. When I was in the UK, in that time, the Ministry of Culture, they kick out more than 4,000, 4,000 in the key positions in the Ministry of Culture, which is an indicator to what severe the economy was in the UK and in the other European countries.
50 years ago, nobody had heard of IT. So it's a big skill that has had to be developed. Some countries have developed it very strongly and will be successful. Some countries haven't and will be less successful. So can you develop the skills of your workforce? That can be particularly important, for example, for a small country. So a small country may be relying, for example, on something like agriculture. So its main factor of production is its land. Well, the trouble is that agriculture is not going to get you very far. You perhaps need to develop other skills in your workforce so that they can do things that the modern society wants. So things like becoming more IT literate. Government policy, again, spending, expanding, contracting, what are they doing? And exchange rate movements, again, fit in with things like foreign exchange. What is happening to our currency? Getting stronger, getting weaker. Both of those present problems in different ways. There's an awful lot of things that go on that actually affect what happens with the economy. Now, as I say, you're not expected in this paper to understand all of them. All we're trying to do is to just have an introduction to them, just so we are vaguely aware of what's happening.
So, as he said, we are not expected to handle all of the economic indicators or economic situation. Just this is like a foundation of the macroeconomics.
Well, to be honest with you, to study for this is just to read a paper. Once a week, have a look at what they're talking about with the state of the...
You should listen to him, because at least you need to read one newspaper a week and to read the economic page, because it's important to you to understand the investment environment.
The economy.
This is what he said, not me. I keep recommending you, but it's fine to see how others recommend their students.
We explain how all these things fit together. So that's just a good little tip. The final thing we've got in this chapter, I didn't tell you there wasn't a lot of them, the economic cycle. For some reason, the economy tends to go through times that are good and times that are bad. And to a certain extent, all governments can try and do is smooth this out a little bit. They can't really prevent it from happening. So what a government might try and do is, you can see here, we have a recession where things are getting bad, a depression where they are very seriously bad, a recovery and a boom. So things get better and then they get...
If you look at the chart, we have the recession in here. When things going severely bad, then you have a depression. And after that, you may recover from the now we are in 2015, we are recovering from the recession of 2008. So we are now we are in this area of
we are the world and we are
sorry?
Palestinian. We are the
in the world, economic world, yeah. And we cannot reflect these things on Palestinian territories because the economic situation in Palestine is related to the blockade and related to the siege. So this is not natural economic situation in Palestine.
Stable.
Okay?
Really good. And then they just go round again. There will be a recession, depression and so on. These things tend to come round about every 10, 15 years. The job of a government is really to try and do that. They can't really present good times and bad times. They can just try and make the bad times not as bad.
So the role of economy, the role of government is to try to smoothing the economic cycle in order to avoid the deep depression and the deep boom expanding, because it's like your cup of tea. If you have 5 spoons, which is it's good for the economy, it means you cannot taste the tea.
Yeah.
If you have a 0 spoon, it means you may not taste it as well.
Yeah.
So the governments, they try to keep balance between the tea and the sugar. So the sugar is the inflation rate, and the tea is the economic situation. So this is the idea of keeping the economic as stable as the government
hopefully,
wants.
if the bad times aren't as bad, that often means that the good times aren't quite as good. The better the good time, often the worse the recession that comes after it. So, impact of economic issues on all these things. What happens as we move through this economic cycle? It means that unemployment will go up and down. Inflation will go up and down. And as I've already said, those two often tend to go in opposite directions to each other. High unemployment, low inflation. People don't have jobs, there isn't a demand for products. High employment, high inflation. So governments try and balance those two. Stagnation is one, fortunately, where you have both. Where you've got high unemployment and you've also got high inflation. That was a situation quite common around the world in the 1970s. So
Look at the stagnation, which is have both.
that's
both
a very,
inflation
very
and deflation
serious
in the same
situation
time.
to get into. Growth, obviously we would like to have economic growth, we would like things to get better, but again without letting them get too good too quickly, because if they get too good too quickly, they will get bad very quickly. So try and make things a bit more stable. And finally, balance of payments disequilibrium, which is a horrible word, but again it simply means, do we have a surplus?
Well, it's
Do we have a deficit? So, now again, the kind of things to think about in the exam, the way that the exam will test this is
So sometimes you are commenting on my handwriting. So this is the beauty of handwriting.
simply say, look, what are these things? What do we mean by the balance of payments? It's the money coming into the country and the money that goes out of the country. He will talk about there is a company or a country with high inflation, what else might they have? So again, it's all going to be relatively straightforward stuff. Read a paper to see what goes on in real life. That's probably more...
So how many times he recommends his student to read a paper about economy? How many times? You know why? Because they want to connect a student with the labor market. If you don't understand what's going, just you have nothing. Okay? At least every week, in your weekend, you can just have a copy of the newspaper and just read what's going on the market.
used to read the textbook, to be perfectly honest with you. So the idea then is the company, in an exam, a company needs to be aware of where we are in the macroeconomic cycle.
So from the investment point of view, the companies, the investors, they should know where we are.
Yes, so they can build a good strategy.
Yes, and they take a good decision as well.
Yes.
If you don't understand the environment, the macroeconomic environment, so it's meaningless your decision, just building on the air.
For example, if we are at that point there has been a boom, we are going into recession. The company has to plan ahead. Things are going to get worse. It will get harder to borrow money. So if you've got any long-term projects that you are thinking about doing, getting the finance is going to become more difficult. So you may have to put things off.
So in this area, it's not recommended to have a project financed.
Yes.
Because the economy, we have indicator for the economy may go down. And in this time, the interest rate is high. And we don't recommend companies to invest in this particular period of time.
It's get harder to get and to keep customers. So you may have to think about how that's going to affect your workforce, how it's going to affect your budgets, how it's going to affect your prices. You may need to think about, various plans that you've got for what you would like to do. Maybe we'd like to expand abroad. Maybe that isn't going to happen. Maybe we're going to buy another company. Maybe that's not going to happen. So there's lots of impacts if we have a business there are lots of impacts if we have an economy that's going into a recession. Just as similarly as there's lots of impacts if we've got a business and an economy that's coming out of a recession. Things are going to get easier. The people who recognise it first tend to be the ones that do very well.
Yes.
So the whole idea behind all of this is we need to look at the outside world. We can't plan our business and ignore everything else.
Thank you.
Tashakkullah.
Like really
So what do you think?
it's more benefit than the whole macroeconomic class we taught.
Sorry. Okay, what do you think about the investment environment or about the macroeconomic environments?
It's very important.
Do you think it's important?
Yes.
So how many times he recommended students to read the newspaper or to read article or to read textbook? It means 3 times. It means he keep nagging on his student to. What about his language? Yes, it's a British language or British accent. Okay, which is I like this British one. Okay, any question? When you're going back to the slides, things become easier because the majority of the economic environment is mentioned by him. Look at this chart. He explained the time of recession, the time of inflation. So he explained the inflation rates and the GDP, gross domestic product. And I think it's important to revise and to go back to the economic class to understand or to have in-depth understanding of the GDP. And this is the equation of GDP. The GNB and GDP. The GDP is most important than the GNB because it measures the local factors, production. And he said about the consumer confidence, and we explained the consumer confidence as
his expectations.
Okay, it's important. The changes in economy and leading indicators like inflation rate, exchange rates, unemployment rate, all of these are considered as leading indicators. Measures of inflations, we have different measures of inflation. We have PPI, we have CPI, we have CSP, and also is important to know about the Federal Reserve as one of the tools of the monetary policy. Okay, and the interest rates, how they use interest rate to keep the economy as stable as they want. And this is the components of the interest rates.
we are required.
Sorry?
مطلوب منا الحسابات هاي المعادلات هاي.
Yes. Just to know about these. And the monetary policy, we explained the monetary policy. The reserve requirements of one of the monetary policy applied by the central bank or by the Federal Reserve Bank. The discount rate is similar to the interest rates. Open market operation is a tool of the open market policy or the monetary policy. Also, you should monetary expansion. This is in the time of recession. In the monetary contraction in the time of recession, we should take some steps to keep the economy stable. We will stop here, okay? Then we will go back to this in the next time about the implications on the stock price.